the spiritual practice, you're not doing this for anyone to see it. You're not doing this to find recognition or find the pat in the back. You're doing great. You're not doing this for anyone else than for your personal growth and for the growth of humanity. But no one needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to expect others to see it or to know it, because doing it in silence is very powerful, because it's not the eyes of the world seeing you, it's the eyes above.
Welcome back to Perspective Switch. Today's guest is Lorena Martinez. She is a clinical psychologist and so much more. If you want to give more of an introduction for yourself.
Yes, of course. So everyone can probably tell my accent and my name. So I'm from Colombia. I grew up in a beautiful place, again, called Colombia. And it's not just the exuberance of the nature, but it's just the exuberance of how magic is like inserted in a everyday life. So that's something beautiful in my country and my background. I decided to go into clinical psychologist because I did a master's degree in coaching, life coaching, corporate coaching. And while I do that, when I was doing that, I noticed that there was times where we were tapped into deep trauma, and I would find myself, I don't have the tools for this. And so I went into clinical psychologist because I was like, I need to have the integrity to be able to sustain and to hold the things that I'm taking people into tapping. And then from there, I met my husband. He is from United States, and we decided to move here. And then my life was switched upside down because I couldn't be a clinical psychologist anymore. And I'm like, what do you mean? And later I understood that it was the way of the universe to show me there's a way. We need you to integrate psychology and energy. We need you as the bridge. And so now my own healing journey, that's why I started to create this bridge, because even though I was a clinical psychologist, my own healing journey was through plant medicine, angel therapy, Reiki, family constellations, like all these things that tap into the quantum field, into the energetic field. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to bring these two things together. Boop. And that's what I do now. I bring the world of science and magic or energy together through the practice and the techniques that I use. So the ones that I use the most are Akashic records, Akashic record readings, which is so beautiful to tap into that realm and into that energy, and family constellations or ancestral healing, which is also super magical. I'm like, I get very excited to share about these tools.
I'm so excited. I love that you have the psychology part, because I feel like that's so important. And then you get to mesh the spiritual too. I think that is a bridge that's really needed in this world. And thank you for doing that.
I love doing it. And I think it's important to bridge them together, because we live in a world where it almost feels like you're pulled either to be really in the human like role, or either up here in the spiritual role or in the spiritual realms. But the truth is that we came to earth to bridge those things together, to bridge earth and heaven, to bridge the human and the soul. So I think of that bridge that I'm trying to make is creating that connection where you don't have to renounce to be your human self and to have your human moments and your emotions, but you can still pull the tools and the knowledge and the wisdom that your soul has to bring into your human life, so you can, create your purpose, do your purpose. So that's very exciting.
You've held events at Lavande, right? Is that correct?
I hold events in different places in San Diego. Okay. So I started, actually the first one that I started was Sojourn, when Sojourn was in Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. And then I met the owner of Lavande and I held some workshops there. We even did a retreat together. And now I'm holding space again and Sojourn and Maya Moon.
Okay.
So it's kind of like these different places where I pop up and do workshops. And then I also do privates at Sojourn, but I also do privates online. So there's a lot to choose from.
I think I've actually been to one of your classes, the Akashic Records one at Lavande.
I thought that's such a sweet workshop.
I really loved it because there were also females there who were, I think, like 14 years old, like still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so amazing to be able to do this work with such young people.
I think the one you came, there was, a young girl. She was still in high school at the time. I think she was in 10th grade. And it's fascinating how some teenagers, and some kids, they already come so connected. But it's really beautiful that we are opening up more as, society, and our teenagers are awakening to to the truth that energy really is a huge part of who we are. We're still humans, yes, but the biggest part of us is spiritual, is energetic, and we cannot see it, but it's there, and it's big, and it's majestic.
I love talking about Akashic Records. Can you give a description of what it is?
I love talking about what they are and what they're not, because some people get confused. I love to describe the Akashic Records, and this is the most beautiful metaphor or kind of transmission that they gave me, because I was like, I want to explain it in the most really understandable but also very sweet way. So it's like, just imagine these beautiful majestic source of energy, however you want to call it, either God, source, father, mother, universe, however you connect with that higher energy that created everything and that loves you unconditionally. It's just there, and it's like, okay, how I grow, how I gain more consciousness, how I learn about what I can be. And it's just like God just exhales, right? It's like this breath of God that expands like a wave throughout the universe and creates everything. So that's Akasha. The word Akasha comes from that primal substance that creates everything in the universe. So that Akasha, it's not only that primal substance that creates everything in the universe, it's also kind of like, I like to think of like this mesh or this fabric, etheric fabric, that also holds all the information. So when God or Father, Mother, Universe expands and is like, I'm going to see how it is to be a tree, then is not only created by the Akash, but this Akash, this fabric, allows this soul to experience how it is to be a tree. What happens? What are feelings? What are the alchemy that you do as a tree? And then when you come back, this fabric brings back this information to source. So it's both primal source of or substance that creates everything, but it's also imprintable. So you can think like you are typing on a typewriter. So every experience, every feeling, every intention, every karmic contract, every relationship gets imprinted into this fabric. And then every universe has different places where it is stored for the particular universe. So in our case, the library of the Akashic Records is held in Venus, planet Venus, the planet of love, but in the sixth dimension. So obviously, it's not like if they would go and like, let's look for this library. It's not in the 3D, it's in the sixth dimension. And so, if you think about that, there is a record of every experience you have had since the moment you individuated from source until now. Everything you've lived, experienced, felt, every connection is recorded. And there's a place for every soul where all of that is stored. So when we get access to that, we get access to that information. There's another part, it's like, imagine the amount of information that is there, lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of things that we've lived through. So how the information gets filtered, like funneled down, is imagine the board of executives of the higher beings and your ancestors and your loved ones in higher dimensions. So this is in the level of love and unity. So it's 6 and above. You have a board of executive, you have a board of beings that help you plan this life and help you throughout this life with guidance. So they are the ones that when you open your records or you ask someone else to open your records, they're the ones that filter and say, okay, she needs to know that this is what she needs right now to overcome this blockage or overcome this trauma. This is what she needs now to connect with purpose, with happiness. So a lot of the times people want very specific things like, have I been a king or a queen in this world or maybe in another? And sometimes that's not an answer that will be a question that will be answered because it's not aligned with your purpose and your life right now.
Yeah.
If it is, then they would give the answer. If it's relevant to what we're going through right now, they would answer that question. But if it's not, maybe they say it's not relevant, or they give you a little answer, but then they move on to what you really need to hear.
Do you find that asking more of a general question is better than like a really specific, like, was I a king in a past life versus what past life is most beneficial for me to learn about right now that will help me grow?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, like more open questions are the ones that bring this waterfall of information. Sometimes people is just more like, you know what? I don't really have a question, but I do have an intention. So you might not have a clear like set of questions, but you have this intention in your heart. Like, I want to connect with happiness or with joy, or I want to grow as a soul. And then just coming into the session or the space with the intention and not a ton of questions or very defined questions, more information like pours in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find that is the case.
Do you do readings for other people or do you usually guide other people to do their own readings?
I love that question. And it's going to be a 2-part question. Number one, I love empowering people with the tools. I
Yeah.
don't want to be your guru. I don't want to be put in a pedestal. I want you to have the tools so you can start this inner journey uh, yourself, because you hold the wisdom. You are the healer. You are the crystal. You are the pyramid. So
Yeah.
I love empowering people. So I do both. I do readings for others, but I also hold workshops like the one you attended, where I teach people how to read their own records, coming into this space, because sometimes when you open your records, you're not meant to receive human information, but you are receiving high vibrational
Mhm.
energy. So,
That is
yeah.
so important. I feel like there's been so many times, especially in meditation, where I'm not getting any downloads or any, like, nothing's really coming to me. But to know that the energy that I'm sitting in, that is the most powerful thing. And that I don't always need to have a thought or a realization or like this really profound experience.
It's really important to remind us that, in the human world, we want everything, again, to be very specific, very logic, the image, I want the word. I almost just want you to send me like a page with everything. But in the higher realms, everything is energy, everything is vibration. So readers, what we do is translate that the best way we can into information. But there's a big chunk, the biggest chunk that you get when you tap into these experiences is energetic. And I like to think about this metaphor is like we are in our human roles, taking life super seriously and kind of being hardened in our openness to source and to the higher realms. And it's kind of like an umbrella when we get in this very human, like, and I want things this way and where things are not this way and I need to know. So that's the umbrella. So when we go into meditation, when we go and open our records by ourselves or with other, when we go to a workshop or a ceremony, what happens is that we close the umbrella without knowing. And at that moment, all the sky, the heavens, your guides are like, oh my God, the umbrella's down. Let's send everything down that we can. And that is the biggest part of that is energetic, is vibrational, is awakening little codes here, is fine-tuning the DNA here, creating a tiny connection. And then, but we are always expecting, like, where's my instruction list?
Yeah, what do I do next? Tell me what to do.
Yeah. So, and I hold workshops too where I teach people how to do it for others. So those are longer trainings, 2 or 3 days, where we go deeper and then we learn how to do it if we want to do it for others.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
I don't call myself spiritual coach. Like what are you? I'm like, to be honest, I think I'm just a tool giver. Like I just have a bunch of tools and then like, oh, you can use this one or use this one. But trust your wisdom that you use it the best way.
Do you currently have a tool that you use the most right now?
I think there's two, like for my personal growth or others.
For your personal growth.
Okay, for my personal growth, the tool that I'm trying to do the most right now is be present, number one. And it's very hard. Like, it's a very hard exercise. Like, don't think about the next thing you have to do. Are you here today with your daughter at the park? Don't think about what comes in the next hour. Be here. And that has so much power. It's literally all your consciousness and all your energy in one place. I just got chills. And then the other one, which is also challenging, is like you're not doing anything what you're doing throughout your day or your spiritual growth or your spiritual practice. You're not doing this for anyone to see it. You're not doing this to find recognition or find the pat in the back. You're doing great. You're not doing this for anyone else than for your personal growth and for the growth of humanity. But no one needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to expect others to see it or to know it, because doing it in silence is very powerful, because it's not the eyes of the world seeing you, it's the eyes above that are seeing the work. And that's a lot.
Right now, I've been working on slowing down, which I feel like is similar to being present. Because like when I'm going so fast, I am thinking about like, oh, I need to do 100 other things. So I'm like super speedy. But when I get to just surrender and slow down, and it's interesting, it feels like an energy. Like when I become really present and like I like let go of this tension that I'm holding. So that's one of my little practices at the moment.
So it's super aligned, right? It's becoming, it's not a word, like it's not something you know logically. You just describe it, you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You like your body feels it too. I love that. And then for others, like what would be the tool that I'm using the most right now? It's ancestral healing. I think our earth and our lineages and our bloodlines are all like, okay, someone do the work, please. And I'm finding that in that ancestral work with family constellations is just, whenever I do a session, I just feel so humble to see the magic that happens with the person. Like I barely have to do anything, and how the person becomes like this crystal, like this catalyst for their own lineage to heal is very powerful. Honestly, it's like witnessing magic. But the most beautiful part is that like I barely have to do anything.
Yeah, you're the vessel.
So that's beautiful. It's beautiful. So ancestral healing is a big one for me and for others. So whenever I'm feeling unblocked somewhere, I check with myself and I'm like, is this mother lineage? Is this father lineage? Is this mother energy? And then I check with myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I see. I see why. I see where the blockage is.
Do you feel like the biggest healing is just becoming aware of the blockages?
I think that's the number one.
Yeah.
That's like the number one step is awareness, is consciousness. And it's really fascinating because and you know what? That is very what psychologists do through their questions, through the sessions, is like making you go into that, aha moment.
Yeah.
Because then when you become aware of it, when you see it and when you connect the dots and you go, or aha, is when you have the power to transform it. So first you really have to see it. And then comes the second part where is, what do I do now to work on what I discover? So yeah, you're right on point. That's the first one.
Thank you. I've noticed recently I've been having a lot of random thoughts of just random experiences within my life. I'm like questioning, have I always kind of just randomly thought about different experiences in my past? Or is this happening more often? And am I releasing these past experiences? Because I've grown and changed so much. And I used to be so shy and quiet and kind of just like wanting to spend all of my time alone. And then there's been so many awkward experiences that I've had with people and just experiences that I haven't been proud of. And they like random things will come to my mind.
I think that right now, this particular moment in humankind, this particular landscape or this particular like astrological weather, which is all the stars, and like the moment that we are as a universe and the moment that we are as a planet and a society, it's a moment that is kind of creating those little aha moments, those connections quicker than before. So if before we would have one of those like after a decade of going through the loop of like the same thing happening and happening, maybe a decade after we would like, but right now, because we are in this like fast pace of ascension, it's almost like, okay, humankind, we gotta be quick. So I feel like they come faster.
Yeah.
And you go to the loop of experiences or thoughts, and then it's faster when you go, like even within 6 months or even a year, like very quick, you kind of make that clip, or all of a sudden, all of those thoughts like make sense, but now it's quicker than before. So when you're saying you feel like you've grown a lot, you probably feel like you've grown a lot the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And I don't really see. You're not shy anymore.
No, I'm not. No.
You're doing this.
It's one of those things that I also feel like I need to acknowledge myself of how far I have grown, because sometimes I just get so caught up in like wanting to be better all the time where I don't sit and stop and be like, wow, I've done a lot. I've faced a lot of fears and I love the person that I am right now.
I love that you say that. I think loving the person that you are is the most most healing thing we can do for the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you love who you are, as you are right now, knowing that there's more space to grow, there will always be more space to grow.
Yes.
But knowing for when, where are you coming from, I think that's what really allows us to connect with purpose. When you stop and you're like, I really like who I am right now. And you probably shed a ton of layers of the things that you were not.
Yes.
And now you discover this person underneath and you're like, oh, wow, I love this person. That's like the most healing thing I can imagine or wish for anybody.
Yeah. And I've really gotten into a place of acceptance also. Like, even loving me when I'm in my shadow, even loving me when I feel really dark or when I feel really lazy or just like all of those past moments. I think that's true self-love, is when you can love yourself at your worst.
I totally agree. I've been in the most like shadowy work of my life. And that has been for like 4 or 5 years where I've been shown. And again, a lot of people think the shadow is this scary place. It's just, yes, it's this place of discomfort because you have to see a lot of the times the wound or the trauma, what originated that place of consciousness that didn't have light. So for me, the shadow is just places of your consciousness, places within your body, places within your DNA where there was not light before. And so when you go into the shadow, yes, you'll find a lot of times the wound and the trauma, and you bring the light. It's like going to a dark room that was forgotten, and then you bring your light and you open the windows, and it's dusty for a little bit, and it's really messy, and like, what do I do with this room? But then you start going through the room with the light, with the awareness, with the uncomfortableness, you go and dust, and you find treasures in there. You go and find in a corner like, oh my God, I didn't know I had this. And that could simply be like, I didn't know I had this resilience. I didn't know I went through that. Wow. So shadow work is also very powerful. Like biggest strength going through those rooms within. And a lot of as I work on that, a lot of my gifts they just get more clear. And I have gifts, but everyone has gifts. I'm just really excited when someone is like, this is shadow work. I'm going through the dark night of the soul. I even like I'm here for you, but like you are in a beautiful hunt and you're going to find some really beautiful things.
Yeah. It's like, oh, how exciting. You get to discover something about yourself. You get to release something or learn something.
Or heal something that has been there for centuries and just being passed down or from a past life.
I had this moment of being rejected from a guy that I liked. And I remember just being in my room and being like, okay, like I'm just going to meditate because I was hurting. And I just let myself express the hurt and crying. And I felt so grateful in that moment because I really got to just be with it and to not feel a suffering from the pain, but just an awareness and an observation. And then I was able to connect like this feeling of loneliness of how I seek relationship because I'm actually really lonely. And then going all the way back to when I was like 5 years old, driving with my mom, and we would get home. She would park the car and go outside and grab the mail. And for some reason, that's exactly when I would wake up when I'm alone in the car. And I would just start hysterically crying because I felt so lonely. And right now in this moment, I feel so grateful that I had that opportunity to explore that pain and that hurt from that place of almost gratitude that I could go there and I could go there with awareness and observation.
It is beautiful. And I know it's also very cliche to hear, these things like healers or people helping, bring consciousness to these themes and subjects. Someone can think, how is it is okay to be hurt so you can help others? How is like these are not crazy paradigm where all your trauma now is helping others. It's this crazy design, universal design. And yes, we came here to experience that very extreme polarity. Is 3D is the polarity at its best. We chose to be here. But when you also realize that it's like we get to be humans, we are in this sandbox, it's a playground. And in higher realms, there's not emotions. So even the deep hurt and that deep feeling of rejection, and when you really grieve a relationship, and then when you're really happy, like we only experience this as humans.
Yes.
So in the rawness of that, there's beauty too.
Yes.
There's power too. And it's like, I'm feeling this. I'm being human in the most human way. I guarantee that, it's very uncomfortable here. But when we go up there, we're like, I get an A on human emotions. And sometimes I also, know it's hard to be in those places, especially when we feel lonely, right?
Yeah.
Loneliness is one of the hardest distortions to experience on earth, because it's hard to understand, like, we are all one. We're all connected, all together anyway. We don't see it here. But I feel like it's that invitation to realize that if you are with yourself, you're experiencing that, you're really not alone. It's a weird concept, but when you are in there in the most raw of your experience, I feel and I've seen through the Akashic records all your masters, your teachers, like just there. And we can see them, and your angels. And I have felt them in moments where I crumble on the floor on my knees and I cry because it's like hard. And I breathe and I feel them. It's beautiful and raw.
So when I think about my lineage, sometimes I just think about the negative things. I'm like, oh, they gave me this and this and this, and like I'm like healing from this and this. But like I'm never like, but they were also really powerful, amazing, strong. And I think I just wanted to integrate both sides of that. Do you ever think about this or experience it, or like your clients talk about it?
Yes, I love that you say that, because a lot of people think of like ancestral healing or family constellations or ancestral healing through family constellations. We like immediately it's like the trauma, the bad parts, the experiences with my dad or my mom, and we don't realize that part of the process of ancestral healing is reclaiming their power, is reclaiming their gifts, is awakening that again in our DNA by accepting them as they were, even if they were not the ideal father or the ideal mother, and so on, as it goes back in the lineage. Within that DNA that your mother and your father gave you, there is hundreds and thousands of people that had wonderful things. If they had to go through really hard things, immense resilience. But if you check, like I did that exercise with myself, like started checking my lineage. And I started asking, okay, so this guy, where did he live? What did he used to do? This lady, da 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 da. And of course, I found a ton of trauma. But then I found like, this guy was a really like good guy when it came to business. This guy was actually one of the first billionaires in Colombia. This guy was one of the ones that created the coffee association in Colombia. This guy or this lady was really good creating herbal medicine for women, and she was known for that. And then I was like, okay, so this is great because I can go and tap into the quantum field of my lineage and say, thank you, I forgive you. But also, I can say, I am the one, as I am here in this moment, that is going to reclaim all the blessings that you couldn't, because they worked so hard. They had to go through so much. And that's like building this booty of blessings that they couldn't reclaim. But it's there, it's in our DNA, it's in our blood. Like, why not also going to that space and say, I am here to reclaim all the blessings that you work so hard for, and that I get to leave it for me and for you. And believe me, your ancestors, our ancestors, could not be happier for us to finally harvest those blessings and those gifts. If you start exploring, you'll find talented, very wise people in your lineage too.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And right now in this moment, I feel so compassionate for my ancestors. And even if like even with the generational trauma, just getting to like see from my perspective currently of how beautiful that is for them to have experienced all of those things, to experience their own trauma and to experience their own joys. And I just feel really compassionate, and I'm tearing up. You probably can't tell, but
Yeah, and part of these, one of the most important part of ancestral healing is just having that compassion, like my parents were not, the best parents, movie like parents that I would wish, but they gave me, this is the biggest like thing for me, they gave me what they had. At the end, they gave me what they were given. So if you go back, it's like, how was my mom or my dad? How was their upbringing? And then you realize that actually they did it a little bit better than how it was with them. And then you ask your grandparents, or you kind of get the sense of what your grandparents got. And it was like the bare minimum. There was not this consciousness about upbringing kids. There was not this consciousness before. Kids were almost like an annoyance. It was almost like they were not people. So imagine what our grandparents got. Like there was, when I ask people, I get also a lot of people in their golden years, as I like to call them, like, how was your upbringing? Most of them, they say there was basically no expressions of love. Like I barely ever got a hug, or I never got a hug from my dad. And my dad never got a hug from his dad. And when you see that, they just gave you what they could. They just gave you what they had. That really helps you get into this place of compassion. It's almost like, I need $10 from you, but they open their pockets and they're like, I only have 5. I'm sorry. That's all I can. And then that helps you enter in that place where you're like, you gave me what you had, and this is my time, and I'll make sure that I give a little bit better to the next generation.
yeah.
That really helps most of the times to like.
And my dad, he was born in Morocco and he moved to Israel when he was about 4. He also had, I think it was 11 brothers and sisters, and they lived in a really tiny apartment. So like when I like put that into perspective of how when he was about 20 years old, he started traveling around the world and he met my mom in Florida. So it's like when you zoom out and look at all those like little things that happened that created me, that I'm here right now. I get to live in California. I moved from Philadelphia. It's so easy to count the blessings,
It's really easy. And also, there's another, you just said it perfectly, like all the little things that had to happen for you to be here and just being alive. Some of these things were not the best, right? Some of these things were challenging, or you could say, like, was that the best decision? But if it would have been another decision, you wouldn't be here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like the minimum change, like, okay, I'm not going to Florida, I'm going elsewhere, I'm just staying here in Israel. You wouldn't be here. So it's also honoring their life and their decisions, because somehow all of those decisions from hundreds and hundreds of ancestors brought you here.
Yeah.
You're here, and you found a way to make your way into this human life.
Do you remember what your first spiritual awakening experience was like?
So I remember my first experience when I was 4. I was about to come out of my room because my parents were drunk and fighting. This was very late at night, but it would happen almost every night. But I remember like coming out to the door, and before going out, to stopping them, as I always used to do, I just stopped for a minute and I couldn't move. And I just remember seeing like me zooming out of the world, like zooming out from the room, zooming out from the building, and then from the earth. And then somewhere in the stars, I was like, okay, we didn't come to earth to do this like normal cycle, like work and move to places and get married and go to school. And like, I just had that realization. I don't know why. It was triggered by what was happening in my house, but I just saw it from that higher perspective. I'm like, we come here to heal and to grow. And this is part of it. And I'm not of the earth. We're not from here. we are from somewhere around here. We came here to grow through all these experiences. I was 4, and that was like, what? But I had to grow.
4 years old?
I had to grow up really fast because what was going on in my house. So I literally had to grow like this. And then from there, I think I would just be very curious. So I was reading books of Castañeda. Castañeda is a reporter that writes books from a shaman in Mexico. So I was reading all these books since I was 10 or 11. And I would look for, later when I was older, uh, people like Matias de Stefano, which is now really famous, but at that time he wasn't, and look at his channelings where he would explain that he came from another place and that he could remember other lives. So I just remember just always being so interested in reading about this, and frankly being like the weirdo of school because I would talk about these things. And then going to nature and just sitting on the grass and just looking at not the grass and the trees, but just almost feeling like the nature was alive and that there was living things there that I couldn't see. This was probably when I was a preteen. Then on the years of teenage years, young adult, university, I kind of disconnected from that. I was just very much like in university. Then one day I was like, oh, I'm gonna have some plant medicine. Like I was at that time, I was really working on with my father's wound because my relationships were all horrible. And I kept seeing the trend. I'm like, okay, this is the time to work on the father wound. I don't want to keep manifesting the same guy. And I did different things, angel therapy, Reiki, a bunch of trainings. But then I did plant medicine. I did ayahuasca from a shaman from the Amazon. So I almost died on that. They had to call an ambulance because I wasn't breathing. Apparently, I was like blue or gray.
Wow.
But at that moment, when I was super blue and gray and I don't know what was happening around me, I literally saw what everyone describes when they have a near death experience. Like I saw the tunnel, I saw my body, I was like, am I dying? And I saw all these beautiful angels and they're like, yes, you're dying. I'm like, I don't want to die.
Wow.
And then I got to this warm, beautiful light. And the one thing I heard was, I love you. And that hit me in a way I can't describe. It's forever imprinted in my cells, I guess. For me, it's like I heard Source, God, which is at the end within me, saying, I love you. And then I was in this beautiful soup of consciousness and love. And then, like, okay, you have to go back. I'm like, no, I don't want to. I want to stay here. It's so cool. And it's like, no, you still have things to do on earth. You still have a mission on earth. I'm like, no. And then okay, let's go back. They show me my kids. I only have one kid, but they show me 2. So that's why I think I'm going to have another one. And then I was like, okay, that's really sweet. I do want to go back. And then from there, my channeling gifts got triggered. But I'm also very careful now when I tell people, don't do this just because you want to trigger something. You have to do this very responsibly, because for the next 2 years, I had an anxiety disorder because I didn't know like how to handle being able to tap into people's energy.
Yeah.
So just going to a restaurant was triggering, extremely triggering. And then I use my angel support to learn how to manage that gift. So that was when that it definitely got like blown up, which I wish, I don't know if I designed it this way, probably it would have been softer. But we design our awakenings too. So maybe that's how I design it. It took me a while to learn how to seal and how to protect myself and how to not get triggered just by going out of the house.
Yeah. And you're probably feeling everyone, right? That's what it is.
Yes. I like feel people's energy. And at that time was to the point where if I would come close to someone, and it doesn't have to do sometimes necessarily with the person, it could be just the entities attached to their aura, I would feel like throwing up.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And that's another beautiful thing. Sometimes you're like, I don't like that person, or I gotta get by from that. And the person could be the sweetest person. It's just maybe has a, some energetic larva or entities attached, and that's what you could be feeling.
Yeah. Wait, also, I have a question before we go too far away from it. So you mentioned that you were attracting guys. You're starting to see a pattern when you were younger about attracting guys that you didn't really want to be with. What was that pattern?
Okay, so the pattern was really, really funny because then when I finally compared to the dad that I got, I'm like, each one of these guys is either one or two of the traits of my dad. So my dad was an alcoholic for, again, his childhood was horrible. So the way he found to soothe himself was through alcohol. So I used to find like the common thread or denominator was emotionally unavailable. Of course, an alcoholic person will be completely emotional and unavailable. He couldn't even handle his emotions. He was not going to be able to handle or hold space for me. Sometimes jealous, like very jealous, or sometimes very chauvinist, very men that would see other women behind my back. So that's when I looked at all of those traits where, these are all the traits that my dad had. Some of them would drink heavily, but at the end, they would just not be there for me. It would be like almost like dating, like a wall, right?
Yeah.
Like where I would do my best to fulfill all of their expectations and needs. And I would like seek their love so desperately. That was another thing because I was desperately seeking the love of my dad.
Mm.
But these guys were just the representation of the archetype of a masculine energy within. I was just projecting it into the world. And it took me many partners and many years of having the most toxic relationships to realize that at the end, I was searching for the love of my dad, for the emotional support of my dad. And if I didn't heal that within me, with my dad, but within me, I was never going to be able to manifest another type of relationship.
Do you remember a pivotal moment when you feel like you finally healed that and you were able to start dating men that you felt more aligned with?
I think one pivotal moment was a family constellation session where for the first time, like for the longest time, I just did like normal therapy. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And that session, the practitioner asked me to put myself in the shoes of my dad. And when I went into that place and when I tap into the shoes of my dad, because that's what family constellations do, you tap into the field, the quantum field of your ancestors. What I felt, it's like what it felt to be my dad, what he was like going through. I felt just such a deep compassion because all of my life I was like, how are you not better for me? How are you not changing for me? I'm your daughter. You're supposed to be doing better for me. But then I understood like what he felt what he was feeling inside, what he thought of himself. That was so healing for me. Because I no longer felt anger towards him. I no longer felt like, why are you not doing this for me? I finally understood, oh my God, you're going through your own battle. And it's a hard one.
Wow.
And in that moment, I was like, yes, you are my father, but you're also a human going through your own stuff.
That reminds me of a moment when I confronted my dad about all the things that I felt really hurt by. And it was kind of the beginning of my spiritual journey. And I was doing all this inner work and I was hanging out with all these people and going really deep. And I just felt so much resentment towards my dad. And I couldn't really talk to him that much. Like I would just keep it really short. I didn't really like him. So it was this one Thanksgiving. I just felt like, I need to say something. Like I need to express to him that I'm really hurt by the way he treated me when I was younger. So I remember that moment. It was so hard for me to do it. And I was crying and I told him, I think I just said that, like, I wish you did better. Like, I wish you were there for me. And I wish this and this and this. And the way he responded was, he said, you were out of control. I didn't know what to do with you. And in that moment, I literally felt something in my heart like heal and shift because I realized that we were both having two completely different experiences. I can't change his perception. I can't change the way he saw things, but like I was able to accept it and to realize that we were both just doing our best.
Yeah, and what you said is perfect. Like, is that shift in perspective, because you always put like your me glasses. Me. It's like, you should have been better for me. Why you didn't do this for me? But what if you take those glasses and put on your ancestors or your parents or, your boss or your colleague glasses for a minute and go like, oh, this is a different perspective. I didn't think about this. And at the end, then you find like there's no one to be right or wrong. You are just living life, trying to figure life out,
Yeah.
with your own things. And that happens within families, but sometimes, that happens also in work environments. You like, your boss is doing something that you think is wrong, and you're doing something that your boss think is wrong. And at the end, you both have a perspective of life or of the business or work or how to live together that is different, and it's coming from a lot of times different fears.
Yeah.
So that perspective shift definitely is super healing. I
Yeah.
put on his glasses and it's like, wow. And then when I think about what we went through as a family, I'm like, it was messy, it was probably not ideal, but there is some beauty in it, because at the end, that made me who I am today. And that makes me want to do better for my daughter, want to do better for the world and help others with tools so they can do it better for them and those around them.
If you can send a message to every single person in this world, what would that message be?
If you keep comparing yourself to others in any regards, where you are in life, where you should be in life, comparison is very damaging. So I think that if you could do something today to change your life, to change the life of the world, it's just don't compare yourself anymore. Understand that your journey is not supposed to look like anyone else's journey. Understand that where you are right now is where you're supposed to be, and embrace it and live it and make the most of it, and like enjoy those juicy moments, because like when we get to where we're supposed to be, then what? Is the process that is the juicy part. The process of getting, like, I want my podcast to be 1 million podcast followers. When you get there, it's going to be easy peasy. It's going to roll super fast. But then when you get there, it's going to be the juicy, the enjoyment, and then what you get to share when you are up there, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, don't compare your journey to anyone else's journey, but enjoy it. Like, really, almost like you having this treat. It's like, enjoy that process and don't compare yourself to anyone. And this message comes to me so strong just because I feel like with social media, a lot of people compares and imagine things, of one beautiful post. You don't know anything about that person's life. They could be having the best life, but it could be just a beautiful picture. So don't
Yeah.
compare. When you compare yourself to others, you're also denying the fact that you have a part of God that is so unique within you.
Mm.
That part that God decided to put on you is so beautiful, is so sacred, is still a part of God, and no one else has it. But if I compare myself to others, I'm not going to connect with the part, because I'm going to want to have the one that the other person has. And that's not your part. Yours is very unique. So when we just focus the journey on us, that's when we get to tap into that unique part. And I just think that's so beautiful.
And where can people find you online?
Well, they can find me on my Instagram page. So Lore Marti. So it's the first 4 letters of my name, Lore. And then Marti, the first 5 letters of my last name. So Lore Marti. And then I do have a webpage, which is The Good Karma Life. So the webpage also has the Instagram for The Good Karma Life.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This conversation was really, really deep.
Yeah.
Like really
It was really good.
sweet. It was almost like healing together.
Yes, I felt that. And it brought up things for me that I haven't thought about in a while. And it definitely, like, I really felt that compassion and that love when we were talking about our ancestors. I'm really grateful for this conversation.
They're probably smiling back. They're probably like,
Yeah, they're like, yes.
yes. Yeah. And then when you are like, I like to think before we go, our ancestors are like, I always like to use this, like the plug to your phone.
Okay.
So the plug is connected to the source. So it's God. Yeah. Your ancestors are the cable. So life comes through you, source, blessings, gifts come through them onto the human world. So when we honor and thank them for what they were, what they had, we are making that connection really strong. Really strong. So we're truly, truly open for all the blessings, for all the gifts, because we accept them and we love them as they were. So that cable is like strong and it like wide, and it's like all these blessings and energy just really flows through that cable without any problem.
I really love all of your metaphors and symbology. I feel like you're very clairvoyant.
Yes.
Do you guys see a lot of images?
Yes, a lot of images.
But I love it because it puts like a physicality onto the things that we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the things that we feel.
Yeah, I think that they just love that, and because it makes it really easy for our human minds to understand.
Yes.
And I know sometimes I'm like, oh, this is a funny metaphor, but okay, I'll use it. So yeah, I love them. And I really hope it helps for people to like, like take that and kind of bring it down to like a Play-Doh kind of like understanding.
Yeah, like the umbrella. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling I'm going to remember that forever.
I love the umbrella. Literally, like, she took the umbrella down. It's
raining. It's raining. I can feel it. I can hear it.
Exactly. Thank you for opening your doors, your heart, your soul. I really appreciate and like honor you for sharing parts of yourself with others.